So hi, I'm Richard,
I'm John.
and we're here to tell you about the Tactical Response Fighting Rifle class that we just took in Las Vegas.
Super intense. Had a great time. It was held over the course of 2 days, taught by Reed Hendricks and from Tactical Response out of Camden, Tennessee.
Now, what's important to know is that we're longtime front sight fans, and we've been going to front sight courses for a lot of years, and we still continue to be big front sight fans.
Coming from a background in taking many front sight classes, handgun, shotgun, rifle, very well grounded in the basics, and that's what I think you'll need to take a 2-day fighting rifle class because it was very little downtime, hot range, you were loaded all the time, and it was when you weren't shooting, you were loading and hydrating.
Yeah, front sight spends a lot of time bringing people up to speed with the fundamentals of weapon handling, whether it's pistol or rifle. And these guys don't screw around with that. Tactical Response assumes that you already have really good consciousness of your muzzle, where it's at. You're at a range, and we start off on the line initially shooting a little bit on the line, but that's only for an hour, maybe an hour and a half. And then after that, you're all over the place, going everywhere. And it's not a place for beginners with weapons. Really, it's not. I think that you should have already gone somewhere, like front sight, frankly, and gone to a 2 or 4 day course, maybe even a couple times, to understand how the weapon works, and being aware of the weapon system and being conscious, and finger on the trigger and where not to stick the finger on the trigger, because people are walking around constantly next to each other with hot weapons. And
loading,
the weapon, picking up gear, and it's none of this like, okay, we're going to unload and walk off the line. If you're not loaded all the time, you're going to get your hand slapped.
And you don't want to be the last person to the line. So when you want to complete the drills quickly. First morning of the class, they started with some handgun drills. They went over their standard safety briefing, what we're going to do, some of the drills, what we tend to get out of the class. We started with a handgun up close with some DEA dot targets. That made sure everyone had some basic fundamentals down and skills. They showed us how they wanted us to present the gun, their version of their after-action drills, and freshening up the gun to make sure that you always had a fresh gun to go from point A to point B, or to continue with the next drill.
Yeah, fundamentally, the Tactical Response folks are going to spend the first 30 minutes, an hour, maybe at the most, going through weapons presentation, trigger reset, things that front sight will spend hours and hours and hours on. In fact, front sight will spend hours and hours and hours teaching you malfunction clearances on your weapon system. These guys didn't spend any time on weapons malfunction clearances because they assume you know it already. So unless you really know how to clear a type, front sight calls it a type 1, type 2, or type 3 malfunction, but they're failure to fires and failure to feeds and this type of thing. Unless you understand those and know how to clear them instinctively already, then you really need to step back and get the basics handled before you take an advanced course from Tactical Response. But once you get into Tactical Response, boy, the course is awesome. So tell us more about day 2.
It was an awesome course, and to touch on your point as far as the malfunction clearances, the fastest malfunction clearance in a gunfight while you're firing is you get a soft press of the trigger, nothing happens, you transition to your handgun and handle the problem. They want you to fix the rifle behind cover. Finish the fight, no matter what it is. Keep pressing the fight. The fastest fix of a gun is to bring another gun to bear, and that's where front sight gives you the basics, type 1, type 2, type 3, like Richard said. Practical, 2-day and 4-day practical rifle will teach you that at front sight. At the 2-day fighting rifle course, the fastest emergency fix is to bring another gun to bear, to keep pressing the fight, to be aggressive, and always keep the gun running.
Now, to be fair, front sight does have an advanced tactics course, but largely that course, and they do teach transitions at front sight, so they have an advanced tactics course. But where the real differentiation here happens with the fighting rifle course from from Tactical Response is the whole idea of team movement and team tactics, right?
A lot of communication, chaos being order of the day in a gunfight or in a situation. You want to make sure you always have a loaded firearm. You always want to make sure you communicate with the teammate. The commands were very simple. Instead of first relay eyes, ears, ammo, 7 meters, it was eyes and ears. That told us everything we needed to know that we are going to be shooting. We really didn't do any dry drills. other than just to set up for what we were going to do shooting next. The communicating with a teammate, cover, something went wrong with the gun, you need his help to maintain fire discipline on the direction you were shooting, and then when you're done fixing whatever you're fixing, you say up. Communication was huge because it had to be distilled down to almost caveman simple, where you don't move from where you're at unless you have three things: a loaded rifle, a place to go to cover, and permission. So that way you're wherever you're going to go is actually covered by the person you're with.
Yeah, exactly. Frontsight does a lot of the basic fundamentals of instruction with the weapon systems, and they do take you to advanced types of training situations where you're doing what they call responses, where you're turning with the weapon and presenting. But Frontsight doesn't really have a curriculum where they do team tactics. And tactical response starts teaching team tactics and working with other people immediately in their first class.
Yeah.
In fact, the fighting rifle class is a prerequisite for taking the really cool classes, which would be nice and fun, and they call them contractor classes and things like that, but they're almost like squad level tactics classes where you're working with a team, you're in a vehicle, you're out of vehicle, the whole team is working together. Those are some epically cool videos,
Yeah.
and I'd like to get out to Tennessee to take some of those classes.
I'm looking forward to it too.
But this class is a prerequisite. They want to make sure that you have the basics of fighting with your weapon system. So what kind of weapons can you go out there? We saw AKs.
AK series, AR series, direct impingement, gas piston.
What about gear?
Gear ran the full gamut. As far as the major brands in the industry, there was a lot of special operations equipment represented. Me preparing for this class, I ran a special operations micro chest rig with 4 magazines, battle belt, to try to take a lot of the, in case you had to go prone. I think the only time we went prone in the class is when somebody fell. The rest of the time they shot from a variety of different positions: standing, kneeling, sitting, supine, and it really gave you an opportunity to test your equipment, not really to its limits, but realize, hey, this is too slow, these magazine pouches are too tight, they're in the wrong spot.
Well, that's what's cool thing about this class. This class does not focus on equipment. It's not about who has the cool equipment. In fact, they're very big on that. In fact, we had a newer guy in the class, nice guy, but didn't know a lot about equipment, didn't know a lot about, oh, well, you don't put 30 rounds in a 30-round AR magazine. You don't stuff it absolutely full.
Seat, yeah.
Because the magazine won't seat correctly. This guy really needed to go to a front sight course to get his basics fundamentals down. Before taking this course, but he was out there and he was in there and he was getting it done. But it's a good place to find out if your gear is going to cut it, because these guys don't screw around in terms of sparing ammo. I mean, when they get out there, they say the course is at least 1,500 rounds of ammo.
I think we went well over 2,000 per person.
It was 2,200 rounds per person. Tactical response doesn't screw around. In fact, they say, hey, everyone got enough ammo, and and it's half, and there's still a quarter of the day, 3 or 4 hours left.
Yeah, well into an ammo can.
Yeah, so it's they don't spare in the ammo. We keep shooting, and then you're in a team tactics scenario. You need to make sure you bring extra magazines and prepared to use those things. Right?
I think 5 magazines was the order of the day. It was not uncommon for some of the team tactics drills to run 5, 6, 7 minutes long, with extended fire, moving from flat cover 3 different ways. You never pop out of cover the same, to the next cover, to the next cover, the next cover, and then heading back. They worked on position shooting. They worked on. They showed us a great drill. Even though if you have the fundamentals down, it really doesn't matter where your Nikes are. You could have a horse stance. You could be. They had us shooting with handgun and rifle on 1 foot, held in the air, foot forward, foot back, the widest stance you could get, and we had to accommodate the range, which was a great range. It had a lot of rocks, but anybody can shoot well on a nice sunny day like it is today. Perfect weather, no adversity. But they are distilling it down to train you how to use that weapon in the worst day of your life. That class, I would say, if it was to compare it to a front sight course, it encompasses a 4-day practical rifle, some advanced tactics, a rifle skill builder, and even their 4-day advanced practical rifle. We did things in that class with people we had just met. Richard and I went to the class. we switched off relays occasionally. We would get together with complete strangers. You know, we've known each other for years. We have a pretty good communication system down. We talk to each other. We know what we're doing. But now you're working with somebody else, and those fundamentals that they taught us in the class, the communication fundamentals, worked with everybody.
Yeah, so we could work with anyone.
Yeah.
In fact, I worked with people I'd never met before, and it worked just fine.
And doing something very dangerous, where you are actually heading downrange, where there's two guys with rifles shooting on the other, or one guy with a rifle shooting on the other side. That's 30 or 40 yards from you, shooting in the same direction that you're heading parallel. That type of stuff would never be allowed in most ranges, but this is a fighting rifle class. Bringing real world experience, and the techniques they taught you have been pushed to failure point in the sandbox and through operators, contractors, law enforcement, military, and private citizens that have been pushed to their limit. You know, so the lessons they learned from that, they distilled down to us over the course of 2 days in this fighting rifle class. And I couldn't recommend it highly enough, but it isn't a class you want to go to your first course to try out. Hey, I got a whole bunch of new gear. I've got this brand new gun, which we saw the guy he brought several weapons out. He'd never really fired much before, and they malfunctioned almost every time. If you're going to roll your own, test it before you come out.
Yeah, and if you're still learning the fundamentals, I would still recommend front sight without a doubt.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, if you're not, in fact, the reason I could operate in the class halfway decently was because of front sight.
Because of our
I owe everything to front sight.
We're squared away.
Yeah, we're squared away because of front sight. So I need to be very clear about that. So take your front sight 2 or 4 day rifle, even take it a couple times, pass your test there. Take advanced tactics if you want. That'll help you a lot. Once you get, frankly, in my opinion, once you get through the 2-day advanced tactics rifle class at front sight, then you're really ready to move on to some cool stuff and look at tactical response. And there's a lot of people out there. Front sight will train this year upwards of 50,000 students, and that's a serious group of people, and they've been out there for a while. So if you want to look at team tactics, if you want to look at getting some curriculum from a different school, tactical response is no joke, and it's pretty serious, so I recommend it.
As far as equipment goes, you want to bring something that's tested. You want to make sure it's sighted in, because there isn't going to be much downtime. If you have a spare weapon, it's a great idea to bring it. Their mantra at tactical response is mindset, tactics, and then equipment. Equipment is third in that, because you can have inferior equipment but better tactics and mindset, and you'll be able to employ that, and you will win the fight. People that put a lot of emphasis on all the cool high-speed bolt-on gadgets, where most of them were taking that stuff off by the end of day 2 because it just was adding a lot of extra weight. So I think even Reed said, he goes, I would love to have a guy, our head instructor and trainer said, I would love to have a guy come out here with an AK or an AR and just have a sling and like 4 or 5 magazines in his pockets. He goes, that's the guy that you want to be wary of, because he can fight in any condition. We're basically running what you brung.
Yep, absolutely. All right, well, I appreciate it. We'll see you next time.
Yeah, take care.